I'd like to invite Mr. Mytilineos to take the floor and give his address.
Ladies and gentlemen, the epicenter of the transatlantic system is the Atlantic Ocean, which connects the US, Britain, and the European Union. Shared values of liberal democracy, free market capitalism, and a history of political, cultural, and ethnic links still bind the three sides together. Two pillars of this almost 100-year-old relationship. First one, defense. NATO in the core, the US military presence in Europe, combined with financial and political support, has provided valued support for European integration. NATO remains the world's preeminent military alliance, with combined US-European defense spending standing at almost $1 trillion every year. The economy. Just a few examples of the depth of the relationship. Foreign investment and affiliate sales drive transatlantic trade. 60% of US imports from the EU consists of intra-firm trade in 2014, much higher than US trade with Pacific Rim countries and way above the global average. The transatlantic economy is healthy. The US economy expanded by 1.6 in 2016, and it's now more than 10% larger than when it emerged from recession in June 2009. For 2016 as a whole, growth in the Eurozone reached 1.7%. Despite considerable turbulence, including uncertainties generated by Brexit, the Eurozone economy is proving resilient, Eurozone unemployment dropping to 9.8%. It has registered 14 consecutive quarters of growth through 2016, and business confidence at the turn of 2017 was at the highest level in 6 years. Two major trends are currently affecting this transatlantic balance: the changing international environment and the election of Mr. Donald Trump. The Trump effect, the business aspect of it. Generally, Mr. Trump's presidency so far is characterized by a fragmented approach. On many issues, he has moved away from his campaign rhetoric. On others, he is moving on a predictable path, while on others, uncertainty prevails. There is a synthesis of issues that emanates from lack of an overall framework that strongly highlights what may be a no grand strategy, but a case-by-case approach, a reactive rather than a proactive policy. Interpolitical struggles in the US political establishment are very crucial. Trump's approach cost him allies at the executive branch and creates bureaucratic opposition. The narrow review of what looks at the moment and mottos like America First appear a signal of a new approach in the international relations, therefore a more landlocked US foreign policy. This disjointed policy makes informal decision-making process like comments on the social media with various voices included and many points of entry. Mr. President also clearly prefers to be unpredictable. This may make sense as a tactic, but not probably as a strategy. Keeping foes off balance can be useful, but keeping friends and allies off balance, like the Europeans, it is less so. The end result, ladies and gentlemen, is probably a little bit of increased uncertainty. This increased uncertainty can lead to things like a situation that will not permit the Western economies to achieve growth and overcome the economic crisis as one would otherwise expect. A slightly more negative climate in the international economic environment that endangers the business attitude that took decades to regulate. Adaptation in the business world is the key. In this situation, there is no ample time to adapt. Creation of a political and business void that others might exploit. Look at China and the Silk Road. Look at Russia and its long-term energy strategy. Also, states hedging in order to reduce their vulnerability to unpredictable great powers, thus sending mixed signals about their alignment, as for example, Turkey. Despite all this, the multipolar and interconnected international environment calls for growth through the current status quo, which must be preserved and strengthened. As for the Brexit issue, I will not tire you with the origins of Brexit. You know very well about the exceptionalism of Britain harbored for centuries, the clash of outlooks as to the future of the European Union, also Britain's opposition to any attempt for closer integration. The economic crisis of 2008 and 2009 brought income inequality in Britain, high unemployment, stagnant wages due to technological advancement and loss of production pace of the industrial capacity of the country, and was followed by a two-stage immigration wave into the UK in 2004 with the EU expansion east and 2015 with the immigration crisis. The problems of Brexit lie primarily in the defense and economic sector. Britain is the biggest European defensive force and one of the two with nuclear capabilities, coupled with important international and diplomatic experience. The expressed willingness of the UK to continue some of the defensive cooperation with the EU is open to the consequences of a problematic divorce. On the economic front, the dangers lie squarely on the British side. Only to mention that 2.6% of the GDP of the UK, GDP, not the exports, depends on trade with the EU. The EU figure is just 3.1%. But before we see what is in store for Britain and the EU, let's have a quick look at what happened in Germany. Sunday's election, I'm afraid, will turn Germany into Jamaica, a coalition resembling the colors of the Caribbean country flag. Black for Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservatives, yellow for the FDP plus the Greens is the only viable option at the moment for a majority in the German parliament. Europe's largest economy is facing a period of weak and unstable government. Though Mrs. Merkel will return for a fourth term, her CDU and its current coalition partner, the Social Democrats, suffered the worst electoral results in post-war history. The far-right AfD, Alternative for Germany, more than doubled its share of the vote compared with 2013 and is now the country's third largest party. The SPD will lick its wounds in opposition, so Mrs. Merkel will need to team up with smaller parties. The FDP's return to parliament means that a group with Eurosceptic views is likely to be a core pillar in the next government. Party boss Christian Lindner has repeatedly called for throwing Greece out of the Eurozone. He has also said that he could not join a coalition that pushes for policies going in the direction of financial transfer on the European level, be it a Eurozone budget or banking union. And yes, you might think that Germany is fiscal conservative already, But this is not what FDP and the right-wing part of CDU-CSU thinks, not to speak of AfD. As for potential euro rescue measures and debt arrangements, if there were any new urgency measures which could not be covered by the current existing regimes like the ESM, but would need the parliamentary vote, this would be a very hard fact in the new Bundestag. Mrs. Merkel can't form a government with the FDP alone, and including the Greens could provide a bit of a counterbalance. Yet, as the Chancellor has no credible alternatives and both small parties gain votes, they will seek to maximize their influence. Another factor that complicates things even more is CSU, and CSU voters, as you know, are very conservative and distrust the Greens. Hence, the CSU has also an awkward future in Berlin. Hammering out a three-party alliance could take months. This will delay, if not derail, reforms to the Eurozone envisioned by President Emmanuel Macron. As you know, Mr. Macron is due to spell out his vision on Tuesday. He will find a German government that is much harder to convince. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is next in store for the European Union? Maybe too soon to tell. The results of the German elections, the looming constitutional crisis in Spain, and the unpredictability of the outcome of the forthcoming Italian elections show clearly that the European unification, particularly on the fiscal and defense issues, will take more than we had thought. However, it is my deepest conviction that now Europe must take advantage of the unique opportunity to accelerate its pace and to transform itself. What's missing in this road path? A decisive step towards economic integration by accelerating the EU's pace towards fiscal union. There is no possibility that the European people will want to continue their path towards a true European Union if austerity is not replaced by growth and development. And this has to start even this year. B, a final step towards institutional change. The EU needs a new institutional arrangement that would help promote deeper integration in the economic and defense sectors, and in parallel streamline and synchronize these procedures. It is imperative, therefore, to proceed to a new version of a European Constitution that will replace the Treaty of Lisbon and thus complete the Treaty of Rome and the Maastricht Treaty, the cornerstones of the European path towards integration. And C, critical step towards defense integration. By 2025, a full-fledged European Defense Union is needed, and the EU must be able to protect its territory on its own against external action, respond to external conflicts and crises when they arise, and build their own defense capabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm being asked very often about the views of the Greek way out of the crisis, giving the business as opposed to the political perspective. The discussion today is all about the NPLs, about red loans, about banking stability, about a modest recovery that is on the way, etc. However, as we all know, the problem we have to deal with is the ultra-high debt-to-GDP ratio, a result of the obsolete structure of the economy. Like everywhere, so in Greece, politics and economic development go hand in hand. Turmoil in politics during the biggest part of the 8-year-old crisis has thwarted attempts of economic stabilization and a gradual return to normality. After the belated closing of the second review, a small but steady GDP growth has finally emerged, albeit from a very low level. The wrong economic model of the country is is reflected very visibly, as I said, on the debt to GDP ratio. What can we Greeks do to lower the debt and increase the GDP? GDP first. And that's a proposal. To enhance economic activity, we need a national restructuring plan endorsed by all our European-oriented political parties, including, finally, Syriza. This plan should reflect the percentage of Greeks who want to stay in the euro, 73% according to last week's opinion poll. The plan would include a low and stable taxation environment, much lower surpluses than the unbelievable and unrealistic 3.5% per year, drastically reduced and efficient public sector, swift privatizations, a real fast-track permitting system for investments of 100 million euros or more, similar to the fast track that was endorsed in 2004 Olympic Games. These are all recipes for a first-degree economic student, to be honest. The difficult part is the debt. Most of us agree that debt is not sustainable. We all agree, not most of us, we all agree that debt to GDP is crucial to improve drastically the way the foreign investment community sees Greece, to restore confidence, improve financing conditions of the economy, and so on. Once we have our own national reconstruction plans in place, our European partners and debtors who have been reluctant to support the country with a meaningful reduction of the debt burden will see the Greek case differently. In my opinion, the resistance to do anything about it so far is not because they believe that debt is sustainable, but because of a lack of trust that we will continue with the necessary reforms to modernize the economy. How can we overcome this? This is my proposal, and I will end with this. A reduction of the debt, call it a haircut, reprofiling, restructuring, on anything, or anything that is politically more easily digested, must be directly linked to the required reforms by all our partners and most of us Greeks. Give it time, say 5 to 7 years, and adjust the debt in small quarterly tranches after concrete, provable reforms have been implemented, regardless of political parties in power or in opposition. This is the way the Greek people become owners of the program and master of their own futures, unlike what we are now. Once this process is underway, we will see results in months, not in years. I know this is a groundbreaking entrepreneurial approach, but let's face it, all else have failed. And the consequences of these failures have been catastrophic for the Greek people, who have witnessed their average income slashed by 25% and poverty hitting unheard of levels in peacetime period. This way, we take our fate back in our hands. The results will be astonishing once we believe we control our destiny. We as a group give work to many thousands of people in Greece and abroad. I can tell you in full confidence that our Greek workforce is the most hardworking and entrepreneurial in our whole organization. Let us all, politicians, business, culture, education, professional, shape up the new modern Greece for the sake of our future, the future of our children, and the future of our unique country. Thank you very much.